Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 158, recorded on March 23rd, 2022. The Cloud Pod discloses all of its Okta breaches. Good evening, Jonathan and Ryan. How's your week going?
Better, now it's the end.
Yeah.
Kitten. Yeah, much better.
Yeah, it started out with a bang, which is our first story of the night. So let's get into the fury that is Okta this week. So I don't know about you guys, but I was sitting around at my house on Monday night watching some TV show, and my phone started vibrating aggressively as all of Cloud Twitter started saying Okta has been breached, but allegedly by Lapsus, which is a ransomware, although really a chaos group. And so it seemed pretty bad. 9 screenshots about, looks like Okta's control panel. They were breached into Okta's Okta for Okta. And, we didn't really have a lot of details. And of course, all of our calls to Okta and to support as we ran our incident response process went unanswered. So we went through our process, did all those things. Then the next morning, Okta had an official statement where they basically said, we weren't breached. The screenshots were from an attempted attack from January. And I had to say, if it was attempted, you shouldn't have those screenshots. But clearly you knew about this issue, because how did you know about this in January happened, and why did you not potentially disclose your breach? And then, as everyone on Twitter continued to be very angry at them, that evening around 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, they said that 2% of all of the Okta customers may have been impacted, which was about 336 customers. And they apparently had access for a full 5 days in January by using support engineers' laptop, basically RDPing into his laptop and shoulder surfing. So then on Wednesday, they said they'll hold 2 webinars where they basically read the entire blog post verbatim in 11 minutes and then hung up the call, which was terrible. So, it's, beyond that, since, that was, I wrote the show notes up, they basically emailed you if you were a customer and you weren't impacted, and they told you weren't impacted. And then they had a follow-up where they talked about their super user account and what it could do, as well as some of the things. But, there's some really, shady things here. They blamed their third-party processor that they're using for support outsourcing versus taking responsibility as Okta, which I think is just dirty. I mean, you pick them, you put them under the controls. Just because they're declared on your GDPR doesn't mean you're no longer liable for them. And overall, some of their breach disclosure stuff just seems a little bit fishy.
Yeah. That's why we have third parties, isn't it, to assign blame at a distance.
Yeah, I mean it's the age old thing, right? Where the breach is bad enough, but then the handling of the communications of it is really what seals the deal, and where you really do all the damage, right? Like it's one thing if someone attacks you and gets in through something unintended, which is that sucks, but that's not going to shake my confidence in using a company. But someone who's hiding it, someone who's clearly dancing around it, and that makes me think that they're not well organized, right? Because that's how that happens.
Yeah, you'd be better off coming out, on Monday night. Their marketing people got alerted. They actually did issue a statement to Reuters, I think, that night that they had been notified of a breach and were investigating. You update your stats page and say, hey, we've been notified of this thing. We're looking into it. We will update you. And instead, you were quiet until right before the opening stock bell rang, and you had to get a statement out because you didn't want to impact your stock price. And then even the fact that they're saying we were not breached, which is purely because they have contractual language most likely that says if they're breached, that companies can exit their contracts immediately if they wish to do so. Based on the breach situation. So they're being very cagey about it. But I'm like, but okay, you have an engineer who has access to Okta systems. They are, social engineered or spearfished into this. They get access to the box. That is a breach of your vendor that you picked who has access to your systems and potentially 336 of your customers, potential data. It's just not an ideal scenario. And, I think, I look back at where what happened with SolarWinds, and initially, the feeling is SolarWinds is the victim. And I think we said it the same way about Okta, like you're the victim here. But then, if you're a bad witness and you're not giving us good testimony about what actually happened and you're not being truthful about the details, it just makes you look worse. And I think that's what's happened with Okta this week is they just look terrible.
Yeah. No, it's not a good look. for sure.
I think there's a few different problems with this whole situation. I mean, while SSO is very, very convenient, it's a terrible practice to use the same credentials for many different services. In fact, banks tell you don't use the same username and password everywhere. If you get breached in one location, now the attackers have got the credentials to get into all the common services that they know that you may use with those same credentials. So, even LastPass, all the password managers will advise, hey, you use the same credentials here, you should change one of these so that if they're exposed, you're not at risk. But SSO kind of flies in the face of that, really. Once one account is compromised, now you've got access to everything that your organization gives you access to. I think the second thing is Okta is a great tool for managing enrolling and unenrolling of users onto systems, but I don't think they should own the source of truth for the user database. I don't think an Okta employee at any level should have the ability to reset my credentials. I want to own that myself, on-prem or someplace else, somewhere that Okta don't have access to. The worst case would be that they could modify configuration. They could allow access to a service from a place where we didn't want it to. They could perhaps allow users to have access to things that we didn't really want them to, but allowing them to actually reset my personal credentials just seems completely unbelievable. So I would not choose to use Okta in that way.
Yeah, the universal directory versus tying it to your AD, that is an interesting choice that I'm not. It does put a lot of eggs into one basket. So it's definitely a question mark. I think people will think twice about some of these decisions and how they do that. The question you had about the identity and then using the identity to federate to others, it's not really the same thing as sharing the same password across multiple systems per se, but the identity becomes that much more critical to secure, right? So now you have to, ideally you have a password. You should definitely have a second factor, and I would argue you probably should have a third factor, which is a company asset with a certificate that's owned by the asset, and then your identity and your two-factor. And I think if you had those, then you de-risk some of the identity problem. But you're right, if it's just a hack that gets you to the identity, then you are getting access to a lot of systems. So there's pluses and minuses. I don't know if it's exactly quite as bad as sharing the same password across all these systems, but I see your point about it. I'm not entirely sure. I also don't know that I want to run my own Okta. Like, I've ran ADFS before. It's not fun. I don't think I was very good at securing it. I definitely think Okta probably has more experience securing my single sign-on than I do. But again, to Brian's point earlier, it's all about how you responded, and the response was terrible.
Yeah. And, it's in the access of the support personnel to that, right? Like that, if there's no segregation there, like how many times we discussed with Amazon, like their breaches and stuff, there's all kinds of mitigations and limitations, even if they are breached at that rate, or customer data gets exposed, but it gets clarified and it gets worked on. So,
yeah, it's maybe give a lot of thought to the support process and the things which support engineers then get access to. In a way, you kind of want to tie access to a customer system into the ticketing system, perhaps. So if you have a ticket open for a customer for a particular account, then within a certain time frame, then you can have super user access to that customer, and it's audited. But a support engineer perhaps shouldn't be able to just randomly pick out 300 customers and start pulling their data and making changes to their configs.
Mm-hmm.
So AWS is apparently going to be spending $2.37 billion to build and operate more data centers in the UK, which I assume is to support the natural growth of the London region. AWS did share some of their details that they will be taking advantage of the Moray West wind farm off the coast of Scotland, and the wind farm supports over 1,000 jobs with the construction over 500,000 pounds to the Scotland economy every year, which I'm sure makes Donald Trump's golf course very unhappy.
Yeah, I wonder if the investment there is in response to them there being like cheaper power available, and maybe it's not so cost prohibitive to build a data center there. It's definitely a huge wind farm generating a lot of power.
Yeah, definitely a lot of power. I mean, they have the London region. I assume that just like US East 1 is probably the biggest region in the US, I would assume London is the biggest region in the European Union because it was the first. And so I just imagine they just need a ton of capacity, just like your East does, where it's like 20 or 30 data centers now, all combining together to become availability zones. So I just imagine they need a ton of space there. And so the power they started building a couple of years ago in anticipation of eventual need for this data centers, that would be my guess.
There's only one region, though, in the UK, and with their departure from the EU and data residency requirements, it may just make sense to build another region.
Yeah, that could be too. I mean, this doesn't say where exactly those data centers are being built, but yeah, it's possible they're building another end of the island, and now they can call it a DR site.
Yeah, I'd like to see a second region. It would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, especially since the EU is not with London anymore. The AWS Billing Conductor is a new capability allowing you to easily provide customizable pricing and cost visibility to your end customers or business units. The Billing Conductor is intended for customers who have a specific showback or chargeback need, and using the conductor, customers can logically group accounts by financial ownership, control the price of those accounts see in the billing console, and a cost and usage report, as well as distributed credits, fees, and shared service costs. You can also use it to share RI and SPs across accounts in a decentralized manner, having all commitment-based discounts shared with only a specific set of accounts or all your accounts, which thank goodness, because I know that's been a pain. You want to buy RIs and SPs at the master account level, but then how it got applied to accounts was always kind of round robin. But now you can buy them at the master level and apply them to a specific set of accounts. That's actually really nice.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, especially if you're tracking the cost of a particular service as you're making changes month to month. The RIs get applied to this account or a different account, and the price goes up and down. It's very hard to actually see the progress you're making toward any kind of optimization. And so by being able to assign these cost savings to specific accounts, it means you can actually better understand your costs. It's awesome. Number Excel spreadsheets. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is Excel spreadsheets and like giant, big data query of the CSV file. That's, I don't even know how many rows, it's ridiculous. So this is nice to see finally some improvements here for billing for people who have to, actually pay for these things.
Always have to pay for it, Ryan. Can't get it for free.
Yeah, I guess not only that, but now you don't just see the list price in the account in the cost explorer. You can see cost based on ADP or any other kind of custom pricing agreements you have.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're an IT shop trying to be a profit center, you can show them fake prices too. We're a profit center now in IT. What do you mean? Doesn't match the price list. That's our prices. What's IT service you're buying from us? Perfect. AWS Lambda console now supports the option to share test events between developers, which I did not really understand until I read this. But apparently test events provide developers the ability to define sample events in the Lambda console and then invoke a Lambda function using that event to test their code. Prior to this, the test events were only available to the developer who created them. And so if you're a new developer coming into an existing Lambda project, you'd have to spend time creating test events first. This makes it now easier for developers to collaborate and streamline the testing workflows by leveraging the same set of test events and replaying them as necessary to test their Lambda code. One of those things, I don't do enough Lambda development to know this was a thing, because when I develop it, it's just for myself. But if I was in a team, I can see why this is really important.
I think there's more to it than just what the press release kind of gets into. I mean, being able to share them is great, but they talk about IAM and sharing them based on a set of permissions, which really means that we can now create test events as objects in their own right, which means we can deploy them as objects in their own right with infrastructure as code, and we can start running automated tests against lambdas as part of blue-green deployments or whatever we want to do as part of the pipeline, and taking that away from sort of custom Jenkins nonsense and building it into the service is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, because you used to have modify function in order to create a test event in the console, right? And so for production accounts where you want to have limited access, but you can't run a test or execute a function, like that's sort of ridiculous. So that's nice. I like this.
Yep.
Moving to Mountain View and our friends at Google Cloud. If you've been looking for that Amazon Connect competitor, Google's got your back this week with the Contact Center AI for Google Cloud. Google is expanding its Contact Center AI, produced with the Google Cloud Contact Center AI platform, And this provides you an out-of-the-box, end-to-end solution for the contact center, bringing together advantages of AI, cloud scalability, multi-experience capabilities, and a tight integration with customer relationship management platforms to unify sales, marketing, and support around data across the customer journey. There's several features to this. It allows you to orchestrate the customer journey by creating a modern experience that can be embedded in their chosen channel with mobile web software development kits compatible with iOS and Android. Leveraging your CRM as a single source of insight into customer experience to unify content, increase personalization, and automate processing with CRM data unification, and manage multiple channels without pivoting across voice, SMS, and chat support, as well as predict your customer needs and route calls appropriately with an AI-driven routing capability based on both historical CRM data and real-time interactions. A new automated scheduling and schedule adherence monitoring and manage employee scheduling preferences with a workforce optimization integration, and provides customers with a self-service via web or mobile interface using visual interface or interactive voice response or IVR. So there you go. If you want a call center in a box from a cloud provider, Google and Amazon are your place to go.
Agent, please.
Yeah, exactly. I always like when these things have like AI in the title, because I'm like, is it abiding by like, the law of robotics? Is it, can it solve the trolley problem? Like, because, most chatbots can't really even answer the most basic questions. So it's like intelligence and that, like, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure that works out.
Yeah. It's funny how you think about what Amazon talks about, and that the reason they built a lot of their services because they had a need for them themselves, and they realized that a lot of people would have a need for them themselves. I think Google built this because they have, they bought Fitbit, which makes a bunch of janky sports watches and things which have horrendous problems, waterproof watches that break every time you take them in the pool, Pixel Buds where the left bud breaks after 6 months of use. I mean, so many problems, and Google is notoriously bad for customer support. Such a large organization, so many hardware devices, and it's very difficult to be a satisfied customer of Google when you have to deal with their support channels. So anything they can do for anybody to make the customer experience less frustrating is good. And let's hope that this doesn't just turn into another agent please situation where all you want to do is break out of the system and just speak to a real person who can apply some logic.
Yeah. If you are a fan of the Golang, Go has gone general available with a 1.18 release. Some of the big changes in this are the addition of generics, which they see as one of the biggest challenges or changes to Go since it was created. Developers have apparently been telling Google that Go have been missing this critical feature for quite a while, and generics will allow you to take advantage of improved productivity, performance, and maintenance benefits. During the beta, they said there was already a large increase in libraries and project gophers using the new generics, and expect this to grow over time. Another big change is they added native support for fuzzing. Fuzzing is a type of vulnerability testing that throws arbitrary data at a piece of software to expose unknown errors, and is emerging as a common testing scheme in many enterprises. All other languages have this capability as well, but you have to do it through a plugin. And then, of course, Google leverages Go in all of their open source software and is their key connective tissue for the online world and the Google Cloud. No love for the Gophers from Jonathan Ryan.
Not really, no. The generics thing, I think it solves a pain point for developers, where you used to have to write separate functions based on the types of parameters being passed, even if they did exactly the same thing, because it's very strongly typed. So generics allow you to write a function that handles many different types at the same time. So it sort of simplifies things. But no, I'm not a great fan of Go. I wanted to get into it, but I think it has been superseded already by other things by now.
What do you think has superseded Go at this point? I don't know of any new languages that have come out since Go that I've heard a lot of noise about.
I think Rust is going to eat Go's lunch.
Isn't Rust kind of your path from a more scalable version of Java in many ways?
It's fast. It's strongly typed. It's memory safe. I see in the next few years more and more parts of the Linux kernel being written in Rust. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually the majority of the Linux kernel gets rewritten in Rust, because it's natively safe in many ways, which have traditionally been risks for C applications.
I don't know. I've never tried Rust, but I've only heard people write really long blog posts on Hacker News about how complicated and how stupid it is in many ways. But it's really great for memory management, and it has all those other benefits too. But
yep.
it seemed like it was really good for the certain use cases it's good for, but maybe not as easy as Golang. Or Python really, which I think is where most people go to coding wise these days.
Yeah, I think everything is built for a specific purpose, and then people try and abuse it for the wrong things. And yeah, right tool for the right job.
Always.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I kind of feel like Go trying to solve a lot of the complexity of like writing in like C programs, has really paid off. It took a long time for there to be like library support and enough knowledge out there where you could research things. I feel like it'd be starting all over with Rust, which doesn't have, the same level of support just by the mere fact it's newer. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure what the what Rust's like. What is it? Its intent, I guess. Like I know why Go was developed. I don't know what Rust's problem was trying to solve.
Well, I don't have that detail either, but I did just go do a Google search for Golang versus Rust and which programming language should you choose. And 2022 popped up as the first result. So this is written by apparently Corden Brewster, a content writer at Trio. I don't know. Again, this is not vetted by me in any way other than I just Googled for it, which means, of course, it's true.
Of course.
So, they break it down here. So by a Rust versus Golang side-by-side comparison, it has a green thumbs up for performance for Rust, but only a yellow thumbs up for Go. So I think that tells me that Rust is more performant than Go. Apparently, Rust also has more features because it also has the green thumbs up. But in ease of development, Go has the green thumbs up, and Rust only has the yellow one. Maintenance is going for Rust. Popularity is going for Golang, and community, apparently the Rust community is better than the Golang community per this quick chart and comparison. So it breaks down to why this is the case, and so they say Rust outperforms Go. Rust is more feature heavy than Go, so Rust wins there. They say Go is easier to learn than use than Rust, and Go will be easier to maintain than Rust, and then the community is just a little bit better in the Rust side. So there you go. According to Stack Overflow in their survey, they were the less than 10% of developers used either Rust or Go. So I feel like we're just people screaming into the internet about which one's better at this point.
It's new hotness. Yeah, it's still all Java and Python forever.
Yeah. I did say that right now in that survey, Go was more popular than Rust, but this survey was from 2021, so it's hard to say what people feel in 2022.
They're about the same age, and they're both about 10 years old, I think, 10 or 11 years old.
Oh, has Rust been around that long?
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. And
Rust started in 2006.
2006? Okay, longer than that then. They both aim to solve almost the same problems, and they're different implementations and different visions. I think if you're a cloud provider and you want to build incredibly fast, highly optimized code to run your infrastructure, where every cycle counts, then you're going to go with Rust.
Yeah, so Go was first announced in November 2009. So Go is 3 years younger than Rust. This article is full of facts.
Who knew that's surprising to me. I hadn't heard of Rust.
The first search, yeah. Well, so I knew Rust was really popular with the Ruby guys because of course Ruby is terrible for memory and a bunch of other things. And there was this diversion into some other programming language which was super popular for telephone systems at one point, and then they got I know a bunch of chef code got moved into that. I'm forgetting the name of that coding language, but that was also awful.
Erlang?
Erlang, yes, Erlang. Yeah. Thank you. And then after they realized Erlang was a terrible choice, a lot of those people have moved to Rust. So that's my experience with it.
I did not know that. I thought it was much newer. Maybe I'll do some more research then because I'm learning all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean you can write a hello world in both of them and tell us which one you like better. There's a whole repo of them. I'm sure you can find the code examples.
Yeah, I probably still have my hello world for Golang that, I've probably had to do that like 6 or 7 times as I learn it and forget it.
Google Cloud Certificate Service can now issue you certificates for workloads reflecting their federated identities, even if the workload is hosted on-premise or in other clouds. At the core, this is a zero-trust approach to security, and it is ideal that trust needs to be established via multiple mechanisms and continuously verified. By leveraging the new capability from Google, you can leverage non-Google services to honor and validate your certificates, which is pretty cool. Again, enabling that zero-trust reality with their CA, their private CA service is really interesting approach to this problem.
Yeah, I mean, I see this sort of connectivity model as the future rather than trying to pipe everyone through like a central choke point. And so and Google and with their, Beyond Corp is really leading the way with a lot of that zero trust. And I see this as an extension of that. And it's great.
Agreed.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Moving up to Redmond with Azure, they have a new Epic processor instances, the HB v3 VM, which I'll never remember again after this call. Now supports the Epic 3rd gen processors with AMD 3D vCache technology. And if you're already using the HB v3 instances and you deploy new ones, you will get the advantage of the Epic 3rd gen processor already, with no other work than relaunching a new instance. So, yay, new instances with Epic processors.
I just, I keep thinking there's a money-making opportunity for like somewhere between like a Magic 8-ball and a decoder ring for all that, all the cloud providers, so I can, figure out what kind of VM and instance types and stuff I need.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get a PhD in trying to figure out these acronyms at this point. Like, if I know that no one wants to standardize our APIs, but maybe could we standardize our instance names across clouds so we all know what we're talking about when we say a C5 or what was this again? It was a HB v3. Like, can we all make that make sense to us so we don't have to pull out the calculator every time and figure it out? So silly. Well, Azure Api Management now supports a private link. Azure Api Management is a Azure API gateway solution to let you publish, secure, transform, and maintain and monitor your API. With just a few clicks now in the Azure portal, you can create an API facade that acts as a front door through which external and internal applications can access data or business logic implemented by your custom-built backend services running on Azure. And if you want to get really fancy, you can put the front door service on it, so you can shut your front door to your API gateway.
Nice.
And then if you want another super confusing Azure instance type, the NVADS is the new NVIDIA-based A10 V5 series processors now in preview on the Azure cloud. The first and only public cloud provider to offer unprecedented GPU resource flexibility with GPU partitioning. They are happy to now bring the same technology on the NVIDIA A10 Tensor Core GPU. So if you want Tensor Core to burn a lot of money, Azure's got your back this week too.
I assume GPU partitioning is sharing it with somebody else, so that's an interesting selling point.
Well, I mean, you can either share it with somebody else, a good friend of yours, or you can take the whole box and then have multiple VMs or instances sharing the same GPUs if you don't need constant GPU performance, but you need it sometimes. I guess would be your use case.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty handy for containerized apps.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that anyone is actually deploying any new graphics card based instances right now. With the
they can, right?
Yeah. That's why it's in preview, right? Because they've only got 5 of them.
Yeah, they only have 5. I mean, I sort of feel like the reason why no one else can get a GPU is because the cloud providers just bought millions of them before COVID, and they're just waiting for delivery still. So NVIDIA's like, we'll just keep announcing new stuff, but we got to still deliver that stuff to Amazon and to Azure first. And then I do have a Oracle story this week, which is always a good time. Oracle is apparently rolling out new compute, networking, and storage services with enhanced flexibility to cost controls. This new service automatically optimizes resources to match application requirements and provides a simpler pricing structure. Leo Leung, VP of Product Management at Oracle Cloud, says, there's a myth that to take advantage of cloud elasticity, you have to rewrite around microservices. Most customers are going to rewrite 80% of their applications. There's also a myth that you need to re-platform. We think that's not necessary in many cases. And Oracle's approach apparently is to grow the infrastructure customers choose at the beginning of deployment rather than to force them to migrate, as he said. Which I kind of take it basically is that they don't believe in scale out. They only believe in scale up at Oracle. Oracle Compute virtual machines now have flexible memory, subcore burstable CPU, and a preemptible instance capability. And Lung says their strategy is to only charge you for exactly what you need, meaning if you only need 80 cores, you don't have to buy all 128. You only have to pay for the ones you actually want. They also have new AMD instances, also based on EPYC processors, because everyone's getting EPYC these days. And they're also allowing you to self-tune the network with simple commands to launch your app, firewall, load balancer, and networking peering together, as well as enable partners to enable CDN without a bunch of extra work like Cloudflare and others. Oracle Network is also giving you visualization to allow you to see how your traffic is being blocked by your firewall visually, because all network people like visual views. And OCI Block Volume Service now offers you flexible block volumes with performance-based auto-tuning to enable customers to change performance characteristics of block storage volumes automatically in response to fluctuating demand. Or when Oracle is going to miss their earnings target, you just rack those up automatically so you charge all your customers more money. Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's a miss to say the myth is that you have to take advantage of microservices to use the cloud. It'd be better, said by if you don't take advantage of microservices, you're just going to pay through the nose because your elasticity only goes in one direction. And so having nodes just sitting there idle in a cloud workspace just isn't cost efficient compared to running your own. If you have any sort of infrastructure and have any sort of buying power, sure, you got to be of a certain size, but it just doesn't make sense to run compute at that level.
I mean, even the example I give in the post is very telling of the kind of customers they're trying to attract and deal with services like this. I mean, if you only need 80 cores, I mean, I can't think of a single machine I've deployed that had more than 16 cores in the past 10 years.
Yeah,
we just don't build things that need 80 cores anymore. Makes no sense.
Yeah, no, lots of little machines, cattle not pets.
Yeah. So the thing is, Oracle makes Exadata, which requires it's big iron. So they want you to not need to do that. So they want you to pay them a lot of money for the big iron, so they can make a lot of money on the big iron stuff they built. So they don't want you to scale out, my friend.
No, that is true. I mean, and yeah, it's you can see how it's core to their culture and core to their product.
Yeah.
For that.
I mean, Oracle's not known for scale out other than Oracle Rack. And that scale out is limited to 4 nodes. So yeah, it's not really like a massive scale out story there either. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're missing Peter this week. So we are just going to round robin through the lightning round once again. And Ryan, I put your name first.
Woohoo.
So you'll let you read that one.
All right. Starting off, AWS Backup Audit Manager adds new controls to help prove compliance of maintaining immutable backups across AWS regions and accounts.
Yeah. These auditors, man. First, you want me to tell you they're immutable. Now you want me to prove they're immutable with compliance. And next thing you want me to prove sovereignty and that they can't leave a region. Like, just too many things. You want compliance people. Just believe me, okay?
I wonder if the control is just a green checkbox that says, yay.
It's immutable and it's there. We prove it. Check the box.
Amazon RDS for Postgres now supports TDS FTW extension for SQL Server databases.
It's interesting they waited a week on this one because last week they announced it for MySQL, meaning that SQL Server was clearly second fiddle to MySQL.
I just read all these extensions as TLDR. Like I'm not into the weeds with databases, so it's like I have no idea what any of this is.
Amazon RDS supports itemized billing for RDS storage, IOPS, and backup features.
So you can see exactly how much money you're spending in granular detail. Nice.
Well, it makes each of the numbers look a little smaller, so it probably works in somebody's favor.
Yeah. It rolls up to a big number, but the numbers that are in the big number are small by comparison. And then they get this way, like, oh, well, it's clearly your IOPS because you turned on PIOPS. So at least you'll be able to see that much easier now.
And then you can, point to the DBA who says you have to have the PIOPS enabled or database don't work.
Mm-hmm. Which is the only possible way to make a database work is with PIOPS. You know that,
It's
right?
true. I've heard that from multiple DBAs.
Yep.
And finishing it off, Amazon Chime SDK now supports sessions with up to 10,000 live participants. However, I will not be attending that. That sounds terrible.
I sign up for these webinars all the time. Like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And then I never attend. But I can tell you, if my sign up form was a Chime interface to sign up for the webinar, I definitely wouldn't attend. And if they actually can find if you can find 10,000 people to go to a webinar, clearly it's for gaming reasons only.
Yeah.
Live streaming through Chime.
It's been very frustrating, actually, being invited to webinars with a limit of 250 people. Like, they have the AWS community builders coming in every 6 months now, I think. And they have a couple of different sessions, and they make the assumption that of all the people, they'll be split between 3 sessions fairly evenly. But no, people get rejected from being able to join the sessions. And what bad PR that with the biggest cloud provider in the world, who operate at the biggest scale, can't even organize a conference call to meet their needs. So finally.
Well, I mean, is it really a sales pitch that you're trying to sell Chime to a bunch of Amazon fanboys? Like, they all know Chime sucks. Because I have this problem right now too with my Google reps. I'm like, oh, you guys want to use Google Meets? Oh, yeah. Well, clearly Chime and Meets, that's the same camp. So it's all bad. And then your Microsoft people you're using with Teams, which I'm now in a Teams company, and I have all kinds of thoughts about Teams. But I can basically summarize it down to: it's fine for one-to-one chat. It's fine for video conferencing, and it's a terrible Slack copycat. And they only had one job, which was to copy Slack. So I don't know how they screwed that part up, because that's the one part they could actually copy.
I was convinced that Slack was going to get their lunch eaten by, because it's a good product and they did a great job, but they charge an arm and a leg for it, and so it's just expensive. And so Microsoft can use their huge behemoth power and throw Teams at people for free, but turns out it's not a good enough product to fully replace it.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. All right. Well, things coming up in the cloud world. We have Google Cloud Summits coming up April 6th, the Data Cloud Summit. They've also announced the Google Workspace Summit for all of you Google Apps folks, because they renamed Google Apps to Google Workspaces, which is just as confusing as the prior name. No one knows what it is. Why they didn't just call it Google Email for Enterprise, I don't know. But anyways, that's where we're at. AWS Summit season has begun. April 12th, a couple weeks away, is the first one in Paris. And then April 20th through 21st in person in San Francisco, you can go to the AWS Summit for free. And then May 4th through 5th in Madrid, and May 11th through 12th in Berlin. And then Tel Aviv is May 18th in Israel. And then May 23rd through the 25th, you can do the federal government version of the summit in Washington, D.C. So that's always nice. If you want to register for the AWS Summit in San Francisco, you can go sign up for that right now. I will not be attending a summit. As I learned, the last 3 summits I've been to, summits are too basic for me at this point. If I were to tell you about a conference that it was on this calendar that you guys were not excited about, which one would you have picked?
That I was not excited about?
Yes.
Oh, it's got to be the IBM conference, right?
Yeah. I think it's the IBM conference.
Yeah, well, that is coming up. That is the May 9th through 13th. But the one that you were really less excited about was AWS Reinforce in Houston in June, because it was going to be hot and it was going to be sticky because it's humid there.
I didn't even think about it. I wasn't going to Texas. Screw that.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to go to Texas now, because Amazon has silently moved it back to Boston. Due to the political issues in Texas, they decided they could not host a conference in Texas. And so they have silently moved it to Boston. So if you had bought your tickets already to go to Houston, because you have, for some reason, you now have to move those flights to Boston and your hotel rooms. So that change happened just silently overnight last week, which I thought was sort of funny because they didn't even talk about it. And then they also announced Amazon Remars is back in Las Vegas, June 21st through 24th. For all your robotic fun that you'd like to have. So those are some events coming up.
Still invite only, or because it was quite restricted before, wasn't it?
I thought the last time they did it in 2019, I thought they actually had it open because you could buy a pass. So yes, I can buy a pass for $1,500. I too can go to Mars if I want machine learning, automation, robotics, and space, which I don't care about, and I won't pay $1,500.
No, it's if you care about those things, you may as well be from Mars.
That's true. So if you want to go to Remars, that's available to you for $1,500 June 21st through 24th. Which it looks like a conference. Every time they show photos of it and what they do, it looks fun, but it's so niche for me that I would never take the time to go do it, unless I was in robotics or space, I guess.
I mean, I'd love to be. I make jokes, but I'm very, very jealous. I would love to go to this conference and nerd out and play around with robotics and technology. Be fun.
Well, maybe we can get a sponsor to sponsor you there to go. You can report back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it for another fantastic week in the cloud. We will see you next week.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.